on the minutes? Okay, if someone wants to just make a motion in a second, and we can,
I'll motion that we approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Spencer and Christine. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Stephen's turn.
I emailed about a lot of this, about some of this. So I just want to kind of give an overview. We were trending, of course, towards about a 4. Everybody can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. We were trending towards a 4% increase in care tax until obviously everything changed in March. What we've updated is a 4% decrease in care tax. And while we know, I mean, March alone was 12.5% decrease, but we were far enough ahead coming into March that we still feel like we'll be at around a 4% decrease. Because again, our biggest sales tax months during the Christmas time have already passed, and we had made up some pretty good ground that we will lose some of, but luckily not a year's worth of 12% decrease. And as I mentioned in the emails, the biggest reason that the care tax gets hammered compared to just general sales tax, in March we were down 5.5% in sales tax, 12.5% in care. And that's because grocery store food like bread, eggs, milk, and such, non-prepared food is not subject to sales to care tax. So in one way, it gives relief to those that are just purchasing just the everyday essentials. But obviously on the care tax side, it results in less care tax. So what we were looking at was a 2.37 million allocation. We're now looking at a 2.2 million allocation. I will let you know kind of what that looks like for the care. So any questions on amount of funding available?
How much are we allocating today at this point?
If we kept what we had recommended for our minis and mid majors, then the amount left to fund is $857,000. That blue box. Or no, I apologize. I'm sorry. That's the amount that's still left to allocate for the majors. This is an opportunity for us to go into see if there's any changes we want to make with the information we have now, or if this is the mini and mid-major amount we want to stick with. I do have a couple of notes that we'll need to go over. But what we have here is our allocation recommendation right now is a 7.6% decrease from the total amount of mini and mid-major we gave last year. So basically 70,000 down to 64.5 is that decrease. So if we kept the same dollar amount, we could represent that the mini and mids have already taken their cut as a whole. Obviously, though, we can adjust any of these numbers before these are presented to the city council on Tuesday. So a couple things of note: the Freedom vehicles. I actually, I should have. This is on me. I should have done this beforehand. Our city attorney asked to go through some of these and make sure that anything we're allocating meets the intent of the care tax. He had some concerns with Freedom vehicles. We fund them generally for the Colonial Heritage Festival. A big part of what they do there is kind of reenactment, live theater. Kids are able to participate in those reenactment type events. So that's where we've always justified the funding that we've given to them. He doesn't feel like, although it's a good intent, the care tax was never funded for history lessons. It's not, the intent has to be cultural arts and recreation, so not necessarily just history. And so if the trailers were meant to fund the event that we do fund, if it's to help with that event, then there's probably a nexus. In chatting with Vernon, the intent was for him to use those to go to school events and other events where he shows his vehicles, which our attorney felt is not in arts. It's a very cool, neat history thing, but it doesn't meet the intent of a cultural arts tax. And so I hope that makes sense. So we had to put 4,000 in here to fund his trailer, but the trailer itself, just to go around for his kind of show and tell, high, on steroid type show and tell, it may not meet the intent of the care tax. So what I did ask Vernon, and he hasn't gotten back with me yet, is like Colonial Heritage Festival, like Cries of Freedom, are there any storage, are there any ongoing costs that you're going to bear in an event, in a year that you don't do the event, that we can help fund so that you're able to come back next year and do your event again, as we've funded in the past? Any questions on that? I know that probably gets a little confusing, but that's our attorney's take on the Freedom Vehicles request.
So what was Freedom Vehicles' response to that? What expenses do they have?
Yeah, he hasn't gotten back with me. I emailed him about a week and a half ago, and I haven't heard back from him. And I don't know if it's just hasn't been able to do that yet. I don't know if it's frustration that we're not able to fund the trailer. I'm not exactly sure. So my thought is it's all reimbursement based. So if he doesn't come up with some things, we don't actually give him the money, but we could set some money aside to cover some costs for him if necessary, which would be far less than 4,000.
Well, yeah, and isn't there a group that's similar to theirs that we're funding some storage on?
The other two, that's kind of the thought was the other two organizations that do the event with him, we have plugged in money to fund storage. That's the Colonial Heritage Foundation at 1,800 and the Cries of Freedom or Roots of Freedom at 1,300. That's paying their storage. So it would meet kind of what we're doing for the rest of that event to make sure they're able to bear their costs moving into next year.
Because I think we could bump their number down to be somewhere in that 1,300 to 1,800 range, I would think. I'm not sure where exactly to go, but.
Yeah, and again, it'll only be receipts that he's actually able to provide, and so we won't fund any more than his actual expenses are. But this potentially I can press him again, letting him know that Tuesday's the day, and maybe he'll get back with me. But if that's what the commission like, I can put that in as a placeholder.
Yeah.
Stacy, Christine, are you good with that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Okay, then the other part is the Shakespeare and grassroots Shakespeare. These were the two that there was a discussion about, well, where is the potential overlap? Are they two completely separate ones? Anyways, so I emailed this out, but here's just the notes there. Grassroots and Utah both gave their the schools that they're doing. The potential for duplication is Mountain View, Orem High, and Orem Junior High. And the duplication there would be that Grassroots is already in Mountain View and Orem. Utah Shakespeare would try to get into the Orem ones, into those two, where Grassroots and Shakespeare already are. And then Orem Elementary is just already served by both organizations. So that's kind of the overlap, if you will. So just the initial thoughts on that were, it looks like Grassroots already has the relationship with those schools. Two of those Utah Shakespeare would like to get into as well. I don't know what the feeling is on funding, to the level we are, so that some schools can have duplicate. We can encourage them to do other schools and let them know we maybe won't reimburse for them to do the same schools that are already being served. We'd like to see new schools. We could reduce the amount and say, hey, we're not funding your going into Mountain View and Orem Junior High where they're already being served by Grassroots. Those are just some thoughts. Interested in your discussion.
I don't think there's anything wrong with funding both of them, especially given that ultimately they've got to work with the teachers and the administration. If the teachers' administration thought it was too much, then they wouldn't be there, but they obviously don't think it's too much, I guess, at this point. I don't know.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So I think Utah Shakespeare hasn't gotten into Mountain View yet and Orange Junior High yet. They want to. So the teachers may not have agreed that they just haven't had the discussion potentially yet.
Yeah.
I'm remembering I liked that the Shakespeare Festival did like educational classes. Like it wasn't just a performance. They actually taught the kids and did workshops. So that's just something to think about.
Yep.
And I agree with that. They really did do more with education than anything, which was nice.
I guess for me, I'm not as worried about the overlap just because it is really up to the schools who will let them in or not. And that probably varies from year to year, right? Like,
Yeah.
that might be a little out of their control.
I think it just also depends on when they can get in and that sort of thing. And we might have, like, especially with everything kind of being the way it has been lately, things might shake out where they can get in there a little more readily and a little more easily than they have in the past. Because a lot of these programs, I'm sure they've all kind of put the brakes on.
Yeah.
Well, next year might be a little concerning because if schools are playing catch up with curriculum and other things, they might put some of this stuff on the back burner.
And I agree with that, yeah.
So this is the amounts we had plugged in. We had plugged in 3,000 for Shakespeare. We hadn't funded them last year. They didn't apply. We did fund them 4,000 the year before. And Kenna, you may remember the amount that they left on the table. You have that? Hey, Kenna, you're muted. I don't know if you can. Oh, there.
Oh, yeah. I am probably, I can't open the screen, I can't open my file because you're up in your file, but I think it was around a couple thousand.
Okay, and then. So,
Why did Grassroots ask for so much? That feels like a big number.
yeah, they've made that request, the higher request, the last couple years. We just haven't funded at that level. Last year we funded them at 49.99, and then the year before that we funded them at 4,000.
So, Stephen, where this is like a reimbursement program,
Yep.
where all these schools probably canceled, the last few shows, could that money roll over? Or how would that look?
Yeah, anything unspent, and I'll pull up really quick the what each of those are sitting on right now. That's a good question. But yeah, generally just rolls back into fund balance, and then it's allocated in the next year. Let's see. Grassroots, and this is always hard to say because they may come in later. We actually are talking about creating some policies that make them draw down faster so that when we get to these discussions, we have an idea of what they've actually spent, because they have their full 5,000 sitting in the bank, but they haven't submitted any requests for reimbursements yet. So that's just how they cash flow. But what we may require in the future, Ken, I think this would be helpful, is they have to submit everything they've done by December 31st, so that as we're going into these discussions, we know what the first half of the year looks like. We haven't really enforced any timeliness on their drawdown, but there probably could be value in that.
That's a good idea.
But there's quite a few organizations that haven't drawn down or are sitting on money. I will say last year, oh, in fact, here's what I can do. Last year, of the Utah Shakespeare, of their 4,000, they spent just over 1,200 of it. So they left 2,800 of it on the table.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
And some of that was not being able to get into schools. I mean, and some of you have worked in schools. I know Stacy does now. I think a lot of organizations really would love to, but as teachers are trying to balance curriculum and other things, they can't accept every good thing that comes along. So you probably, I mean, you could give, even if you gave Shakespeare 2,000, that's 800 more than what they spent the last time we gave them money. And then grassroots, and then the year, but so the last full year, grassroots spent all 4,000 of their 4,000.
I don't know, right? I'm kind of leaning towards giving a little bit more to Shakespeare, maybe even up to 4,000. But, or sorry, well, I guess I should be clear. Grassroots upping their number and lowering the festival. That's just my idea.
Kind of more in line with what could be given that, hey, we want the money to go be spent. We want the programs to be done. We want that to, yeah. Is that kind of what you're suggesting? If they're willing to go out and have a track record of doing it, then.
Yeah, well, they're clearly smaller than the festival. I mean, the festival is well funded and not going anywhere, but grassroots is a different thing.
Yeah. I only plugged those numbers in because, oh no, hold up. Oh, we took the hit on the freedom vehicles. That's what it was. So those, I only put those numbers. If we gave grassroots that 4,000, then to make it a zero, that's what we would give Shakespeare. But we took quite a bit for freedom vehicles, so we could give more to Shakespeare still if there's an interest.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say at least give them what they got last year, if not maybe 2,000. I don't know, what everyone else thinks.
That seems reasonable.
And I agree there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So unless those were the only ones that kind of came up as questions. Unless there's a desire, I haven't highlighted anything else to discuss specifically on any of the organizations. You'll see that this represents a 10% decrease from the amount we gave mini and mids last year. So.
There's one I was wondering about was the one that does the storytelling with the kids. Is that program still going to be happening?
So they have worked with the library. At least they were working with the library to move it to the fall.
Okay, all right. That works. Because I was kind of wondering whether or not that was still going to be going on.
Yep.
Because I haven't heard anything on that. And I think that was my biggest concern. And then now with a lot of these others going forward, is there any of these that we're going to be definitely not be able to perform some of their performances that they were planning on performing still?
Yep. So that's a great question. So I've marked kind of the ones next to them that are a single event. So a lot of these are able to just schedule them at different times. So the Freedom Vehicles we've talked about, the Utah Storytelling Guild we did talk about, the Roots of Freedom we've talked about, the Center Stage we didn't fund, the Colonial Heritage we've talked about, the Brazilian Festival, that's in September. Now, the only thing with the Brazilian Festival is that is a huge, I mean, that's a really big gathering.
Yeah.
And I don't know, nobody really knows by September what they'll be able to do. The only thing we do know is if they can't, then they wouldn't be able to draw down any money.
Any funds? Okay.
The others all are kind of seasons, so they can move some things around if they need to.
Yeah. That was my biggest concern, was whether or not there was going to be some of these that were going to be just not able to move forward. You know, it's just all of a sudden the everything with their event was just, toast, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, so I was just wondering about that, if there was any that didn't, that they just, rather than just shuffling things around, that's always good, but
Yep. Any other thoughts or questions on the mid-majors? If not, we'll plan on taking this proposal to the city council on Tuesday for them to accept or reject. Historically,
Stephen, you should probably get a motion in a second.
yeah, I will do that. I'm just going to go into one other thing.
Okay.
But no, I will do that for sure. Let me just kind of show you what that looks like. The council has always deliberated on the majors, but I thought you'd be interested in knowing what this looks like for the majors. So if we funded at this level, the mini and mids, there's 859,635 for majors. How they do it, I don't know. But if they were to impact all the majors by potentially the same percentage, then it's a 4.06% decrease, which ends up being these would be the amounts that they'd be allocated compared to these amounts that they got prior. So you'd see a $14,000 decrease to Hale, $900 decrease to the ballet, and essentially a $22,000 decrease to the Sierra. And that's if they chose to do the a percentage decrease. So that's what that would look like. Thought that might be of note. The only other thing that's being allocated to, we mentioned this before, the library hall has been a project in the planning for 12 years, the fitness center for 4 years. All money in the past that's been allocated has been sitting in a bank account. And this year, because both projects will be finished this year, we will allocate the interest that those bank accounts have earned as well. So the library hall, we've actually spent all the money now. The fitness center is still in until we finish the project in January. So that one's an estimate. The library is an actual allocation. So anyways, any other questions or thoughts?
No.
I would say I'm giving you your evening back, but I know how many hours I took last time, so I really can't act like I'm giving you time.
Looks good.
That looks good to me.
Okay, so let's if we could have a motion to accept this proposal for the mini and mid-major grants and a second.
I'll put forward the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Jeff, any other parting thoughts for the commission?
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you sharing your time and your insights, and for your care about what happens with these sacred funds. It's great to have your input, and our community is definitely blessed from these events and from these. You've seen we have such a wide variety of people that perform in different ways, and it blesses so many lives. So thank you for all of your time and thoughts and gifts and talents, and sharing that with the city. You're awesome.
No, I agree. And this isn't saying anything about past commissions, because 2 of you were on it last year. So I'm not, but this year I felt really good about the discussion and some things that were brought up and talked about that I think really did maybe in more ways. And this happens with each year we learn more about these organizations, has allowed us to really be more, I think, targeted in some of the allocations that we gave with kind of good reasons and backup. And for some of these ones that aren't doing it this year, but are really a staple in the arts world for Orem, I'm glad we're able to fund and help with things like storage so they're ready to come back next year and be at the level that they've been in years past. I will represent that the Colonial Heritage Foundation said that they would love us to give them money to help pay for their filming of readings of the Declaration of Independence. We've talked about that last time a little bit. I represent that I guess I did speak for you, but I think it's based on conversations we've had that we've funded a lot in the past. We're funding your storage. There's really not a lot of costs that come with just pulling out a camera and recording somebody reading the Declaration of Independence. So it wasn't something that we were interested in funding at a higher level than what we're doing. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's generous for you to recommend and for us to pay this storage in a year where there's no event. So I think we're already being generous in what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
So,
definitely think so.
Stacy, I liked your question and your comment earlier about kind of maybe tracking what they actually spend. So Stephen, maybe that's something we can do a little better job of going forward, paying more attention to that. That's going to be hard this year where there was so much disruption, but looking down the road a little bit to see what how much they're actually spending versus, it's just sitting there not being used.
Yep.
And if
I think another thing,
there's a track
I
record
agree.
there, we should really pay attention to that.
I agree. And I think one thing that we could do next year that'd be helpful is when we pull this, we could easily pull up any of these organizations and show the summary of what we actually reimbursed on, what were the expenses that we were paying for, which may help as well.
Yeah.
We have those records. We just haven't brought them into a presentation form, but it wouldn't be hard for us to do that.
I think that would be really nice going forward, definitely, to be able to see exactly how much of their funds that they are actually using,
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
No, that's definitely a good thought.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate everybody.
Jeff, can you hold on for Jeff, can you hold on for just a second after this?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Have a good weekend. What's a weekend?